Hi, I'm Jack Lynch, and welcome to part 3 of my figure painting trilogy. Uh, Today we're going to sit down and look at some video that I shot. As you can see, I've been doing a lot of figure painting. I've got my paints out here, my oil paint, my acrylic paint, my figures, my mixing palette, everything I need to get going. So sit back and I'll discuss a few things like mixing the color spread that you use on, say, the coat on this figure, which is what we'll paint, applying shadows and highlights, basically talk about blending in between, the transitions of those, and painting a face, which is probably the most important part of doing a figure. So sit back, watch what I did, and we'll do a little commentary as it goes along. So the first step in painting a figure is to lay down an acrylic base coat of colors. In other words, every piece of uniform, flesh, and so forth is painted with an acrylic paint, such as Vallejo acrylics, which is what I'm using here. The purpose of this is to give the surface a little bit of bite when you put the oil paint on, but also in case when you're blending your oils you break through, there's a color underneath so that it doesn't show gray primer. Mixing oil paint. Basically what we're going to do here is we're going to mix the brown color for these gentlemen's coats by using the primary colors. In other words, I will use yellow, red, and blue. I'll take my palette knife here, which is a great tool to use when you're mixing oil paint. And I'm going to use one of the primary colors, which is blue, but I'm going to mix a secondary color, which is orange, to mix with the blue to get a brown. So I'm going to mix, and that's the color wheel there. The color wheel shows you the primaries and then the secondaries and the tertiaries. What we'll do is we'll mix up a sort of reddish orange. I like to go a little heavy on the red to get my brown. So I'll mix a little bit of orange. Then I'll go back and I'll grab just a little bit of the blue. And when I say a little bit, and it looks like I want to put a little more yellow in here just to get the orange going. But when I mix the blue, I'm going to take just a touch of it because the dark colors like blue and black, they go a long way. So you'll see when I take this little touch of blue and put it into the color, it makes an extreme change and it takes it to the brown color. So I'll mix this and I'll mix it, fairly well, and I'll get my brown color going. Then I'm going to mix a larger amount and show you how to do a color spread with this color so that I have my shadows and my highlights. There's one medium that I like to mix into my oil paints before I put them on. It's called Dorland's wax medium. The wax medium basically helps the paint to dry a little quicker, but it also tones down the sheen on the paint. And you'll see I just put a little tab of this wax into the paint and mix it in. And we'll talk about this also in a little bit when I discuss mediums, but the wax medium helps the paint flatten out a little bit, dry faster. Let's talk about what I like to call mixing a color spread. This plays into the theory we spoke about in part 2 of the stop sign rule, where we mix ourselves a base coat of color, or a base color, and then we mix a dark shadow and then a darker shadow, or a shadow and a darker shadow. And then we also mix a highlight and a lighter highlight. So I'm mixing really fast. You can see I sped this up just so that you can see without having to sit here for a half hour waiting for me to mix all these colors up. Uh, I've mixed myself a base color and I've started adding a little more orange into it for a highlight. And now I'm taking a little bit of the blue, well actually a decent amount of the blue, and I'm mixing a darker or a shadow color. So I'll have a base, a highlight, and a shadow. Then when those are done, I'm going to go back and I'm going to add a little more highlight and a little more dark. So what I come out with basically will be 5 different colors. The base color, a highlight, and a lighter highlight, and then the base color, and a shadow, and a darker shadow. So as you can see, I've mixed myself up the base color, the highlight, and now I'm working on a lighter highlight. And then I'm going to go back and take a little bit more blue, put it on the edge, wipe off my palette knife, get some more blue, mix it to the edge. And you can see what I'm working on here is what I call a color spread. In other words, it's the base color of the jacket, and then I'm going to have my shadows and my highlight colors all mixed at once. So there's the base color, the highlight, the lighter highlight, the base color, the shadow, and the darker shadow. Let's talk about mediums. Linseed oil is what your paint is based on, so you need to keep some linseed oil in case you need to refresh your paint if it gets kind of dry. Always have some distilled turpentine. Usually I buy Winsor Newton because that's the kind of paint I use. This is great for cleaning your brushes and keeping them moist. You'll use it a lot. Plus the Dorland's wax medium, which we used earlier. It's a great medium to flatten out your paint and get it to dry a little bit quicker, but don't use too much of it. I also use these little shot glasses, glass. They're great to keep the mediums in, distill them, don't take them right out of the bottle. So finally, we're going to do some painting. The first thing I do when I paint a figure is, after I put the acrylics on, I apply my shadows. In other words, I take my oil paint, and if you look at this figure in the inset photo, I'm applying dark shadows to every crease area and every wrinkle and every shadow area that I look at on this figure. So refer back to the other videos we did and think about how the light hits this jacket and where the folds and creases are, and then put these dark colors into all those areas around the buttons, around outline all your areas like your belting and things like that. So after I've applied my shadows, I go back now and I apply the base color. Some people like to paint the whole jacket the base color and then put the dark shadows in. I kind of do it the opposite. I put the shadows in, then I go back and I apply the base color all around that. In other words, I don't touch any of the dark shadows I put in. I just put the base color all over. Then I go back with a clean brush, a little bit of turpentine on it, wipe it off. Then I blend the transitions in between the shadows and the base color. Blending between colors is really important, and it's what'll set you apart from the average figure painter. What you need to do is look at where you've put the shadows on the figure and the base color, and where they meet, there'll be a very stark line. And what you want to do is you want to take a nice clean brush, a little bit of turpentine on it, wipe it off, and just kind of drag it on the line in between and haze those two colors together. That's what makes the gradual progression of colors believable. So practice, 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 and you'll get it. Now it's time to apply the highlights to your figure. And basically it's like doing the shadows, but kind of on the opposite. You're putting your highlights on the raised areas. Think of the stop sign rule. Where are the lights going to fall? If you look at this figure, look at the buttons. Look at the ridge above the buttons. Look at the top of his shoulders and around his lapel. That's where all these colors go. And then you blend the transitions like last time. You go in between those lines and just haze them enough that they're believable. Now comes the part that people think is the hardest, the face. It really isn't. It's just a little tougher because it's smaller. Look at this chart and make sure you freeze this chart or pause it so you can take a good look, and it'll show you the steps of applying the base coat, the shadow, the highlight, little pink in the cheeks, and blending. As you see, there's 5 colors like the others, like the uniform. It's a base color, a shadow, a dark shadow, a highlight, and a light highlight. And this is a good photo to show you where those colors go. This is with just the underpainting done, and I always paint my eyes in before I start laying oils on. The next step would be the shadow color. So you can see where I've put it and refer to the chart. And it's very stark because it's not blended. The next thing I do is I take some of the highlight color and I put the highlight color around the cheeks and above the ridge of the nose and on his chin and on his hand. Then I go back and I blend all these colors together. Note the hand and the wrist. You can see how they're blending in. So you go back with a nice deft touch with your brush and blend those colors together. After you're done these two, then you're going to go in and do dark shadows and light highlights. And you can see them under the nose, between the lips, under the lip, up around his eyes. You can see where I put the dark shadow and the highlights. And now I've gone back and I've blended them together. And you notice I try to keep the colors where they are. I'm just blending the transitions in between them. That's all there is to a face. Just practice, practice. Here they are finished. Now I realize that was a really fast how-to, but what you need to do is take these theories and play around with them on different figures, different colors, and you'll get it. Find someone that knows how to paint figures and sit in with them for an afternoon and watch how they do it. Everybody has different techniques. I know you guys can do it. Good luck, and come to AAA Hobbies on the website or our Facebook page and show me your results.